Hi everyone, welcome to Chalchitra Talks. I'm Vaani, and this week I wanted to talk to you about Virginia Woolf. She happens to be one of my favorite writers of all times. But it wasn't until this year that I reread some of her works. Somehow, coincidentally, I bought a lot of books that were replies to famous essays. For example, Things I Don't Want to Know by Deborah Lavie, which is a feminist reply to Orwell's Why I Write, or In Search of a Mother's Garden, which is a reply to Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own. I had never bought A Room of One's Own. I had found it in my school library, and that's where I had read it. Therefore, it was a brilliant chance to just buy the book and stack it up for my library. And somehow, around the same time, when I was reading this book, A Room of One's Own, I was also looking for a place of my own. I wanted to move out independently, and I was extensively searching for a place to call mine. And therefore, rereading the book was an overwhelming experience. I always knew about the book. I had read it in school. I knew what the contents were. But it is one of those books which you are quick to judge the contents of, especially in times of today. It is a feminist essay, and when it was written or delivered by Virginia Woolf, it was, of course, considered to be the light for womanhood. It was a powerful essay and so on and so forth. But the essay in all its glory is a lot more. Virginia Woolf, of course, explored the literary world with respect to women, but you can take it farther, wherever you would like, to all forms of repression. There is caste, prejudice, color, gender, race, and so on. And I must admit it that upon second reading, this book is something that has become a Bible of sorts for me. Virginia Woolf writes in A Room of One's Own, when I ask you to earn money and have a room of your own, I am asking you to live in the presence of reality. An invigorating life, it would appear, whether one can impart it or not. She also imagines Judith Shakespeare, who is an imaginary sister of William Shakespeare, and she says, what if such a woman had shared her brother's talents and was as adventurous to see the world as he was? Would she have had the freedom, support, or confidence to write plays? Tragically, she says that such a woman would likely have been silenced, ultimately choosing suicide over domestic abuse or an unfulfilled life of regret and tragedy. At this point, I must also admit that I am a little biased towards her essays. For example, there's this essay that she wrote in 1942, The Death of the Moth. And she says, one statement about a moth: he was little or nothing but life. And in this essay, she's sitting in her study and she's watching a moth who is stuck in a glass pane. And she wrote it. I mean, I don't know why, but when you do read it, you are reminded of the power that death has over life, the futility to avoid death. And she conveys it beautifully in half-written ideas through feelings and emotions and no logic at all. There is another essay that she wrote on being ill. Now, Virginia Woolf suffered with mental illness for majority of her life. And she wrote this essay on being ill, where she argues that most of the authors almost never stoop to describe this illness. Nobody describes the struggle it takes to get out of bed. Yes, there is struggle to get out of bed, but nobody describes the feeling in the pit of your stomach and so on. And it is one of the most beautiful written word that I've ever seen. And she says, we do not know our souls, let alone the soul of others. Human beings do not go hand in hand the whole stretch of the way. There is a virgin forest in each, a snow field where even the print of birds' feet is unknown. Here we go alone, and like it, better so. Always to have sympathy, always to be accompanied, always to be understood would be intolerable. Virginia Woolf was actually born Virginia Stephen, and she had her first mental breakdown when her mother passed away when she was 13. The fact that her half-brother sexually abused her did not help much either. But her sister and she moved to London, where she and her sister became the center of this group called the Bloomsbury Group, which was a group of writers, artists, thinkers, and there was E.M. Forster a part of it. She also met a certain Leonard Woolf, in this Bloomsbury troupe, and she married him to become Virginia Woolf. They bought a small hand printing press and named it the Hogarth Press, and they would publish books from their dining room. All of Virginia Woolf's political essays, radical novels, which were otherwise rejected, would be published from their dining room. Between World War I and World War II, Virginia Woolf wrote some of her most famous works, like Orlando, which is a brilliant, brilliant novel if you want to get into gender studies. Then there is Mrs. Dalloway or To the Lighthouse and A Room of One's Own. Virginia Woolf was a modernist writer. Modernism came at a time when millions of people had died after World War One, and therefore modernism encouraged the questioning and dismantling of institutions and concepts that were thought to be stable, like the government, the church, the social hierarchies. But it also questioned the artistic concepts at the same time. Mostly because there was this new technology. Why would you want to read a book and have a picture in your mind when you could watch it on screen? It wanted to break from the past, and it was, in a way, anti-romantic. There was no belief left in nature or the spirit, and modernism embraced subjectivity and fragmentation of thought and ideas. It opposed the thought that there is just one right or one wrong. It clustered things into various ideas and thoughts, and it argued that a lot of things could be right at the same time. And a great example of modernist literature is To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. So Ramses and their friends spend a day at their vacation home. They decide they need to go to the lighthouse, but they do not. 10 years pass, and then the friends go to the lighthouse. Now, not much is happening in the plot, but if you were to read it, you would realize a lot is happening. Mrs. Dalloway, the book, it has the protagonist. She decides to go get the flowers herself, all in span of one day. And she goes there by herself. But then this process of going throughout the day and realizing what is happening and what is not, what thoughts have led her there, and the thoughts that she struggles with, all in her insights. That is something that sets Virginia Woolf apart. Virginia Woolf died by suicide in 1941. She filled her pockets with stones and she walked into the River Ouse, if that's the correct pronunciation, because she saw another mental illness bout coming her way. And she wrote a suicide letter and left it for her husband. I absolutely love Virginia Woolf, and if most of my blabbering hasn't convinced you already to pick up Virginia Woolf, I'll just try one last time with a quote from The Voyage Out, which was, I think, her first book. And she wrote, "That was the strange thing, that one did not know where one was going or what one wanted, and followed blindly, suffering so much in secret, always unprepared and amazed and knowing nothing. But one thing led to another, and by degrees something had formed itself out of nothing. And so one reached at last this calm, this quiet, this certainty, and it was this process that people called living." For more research on Virginia Woolf, you can obviously start with her letters. There's also this Twitter bot, which goes by the name Bot Virginia, I guess, and you can follow them for more insights on Virginia Woolf. This was my recommendation for this week. I hope you like it. And if you've already picked up Virginia Woolf and have your favorite bits and pieces, please share them with me in the comment section below. That would really make my day. And before I leave, I want to tell you that you can support us on Patreon and YouTube community if you like our work. There are 3 different categories: Godfathers, Goodfellas, and Gladiators. Godfathers being at the top. Each category comes with its own books. You can join our exclusive WhatsApp groups that are dedicated to films, music, and books. There is also this opportunity to join our weekly movie quizzes, and you can also join Vaibhav and me on our streams by becoming a patron. So that was all for this week, guys. Hope you have a lovely week ahead, and I will be back again with another recommendation for you guys.